Ready now. Okay, so this is the first anniversary of taking a sip, and it's the 11th anniversary of Earthen Cup. So we thought I'd interview you. And as you see at the bottom of on our chyrons, there's me, and then there's you. How about that? You bring the significantly predominant yoga perspective to Earthen Cup. So what is your yoga origin story?
Well, we could go all the way back to when I was little. My mom introduced me to yoga. She would do some yoga postures. She would, mostly it was asana. It was the postures that she was learning from Whit East at the YMCA, or well, it was YWCA, and then it was YMCA. And I took swimming from Whit when I was little bitty, but she would do them at home, and I would try to mimic what she was doing and stretch. And then when I was probably in college, a friend of mine invited me to go with her to a class at the YMCA and take this yoga class with her. We walked in, and who was the instructor? Whit East. And he was probably in his 70s at that point and was still teaching multiple classes a day. He would sit in the chair and talk us through the postures, and he had stories and different things that he, incorporated into the flow, and he was wonderful. The class was crowded, always needing a bigger space to teach in, and he was a fabulous instructor. And my friend went on to become a yoga instructor, and I thought that was kind of interesting. And for a while, she had her own yoga business. I moved out west and then found myself back in some yoga classes in my travels. Again, kind of at the Y or at whatever fitness studio I was a part of. And then one time, one of my teachers asked me if I would go with her to a workshop in Minnesota, and I would travel with her and be her roommate to help share the costs. And I would get to get my certification in teaching and maybe sub for her sometime if I wanted. So I thought, why not? And the rest is kind of history. I got my certification. I did my volunteer instruction that was required for my yoga level 1. And then really, it was at another conference I attended maybe close to a decade later when I found out about the trauma sensitive approach and the influence of the work of Levine and Vanderkolt. And that really transformed my yoga journey and my practice and the way that I taught. And so that was also about the time when we were starting Earthen Cup. So
yeah. What is the difference between yoga, as you would go to your yoga studio in the mall or wherever, and trauma sensitive, trauma informed yoga that you practice?
Yeah, yoga at the mall or yoga anywhere else might be trauma informed. The teacher may have some instruction in that. But what we understand a trauma informed, trauma sensitive approach to be slower, in the sense that we are building awareness of the body. We're building awareness of the breath. We're giving people tools for emotional regulation, for autonomic nervous system resetting and regulation when we find ourselves in that loop of anxiety, stress, which is sometimes characteristic of PTSD. And so a trauma sensitive approach is aware of some of the things that may initiate that fight, flight, or freeze response, and tries to soften that or eliminate that if possible by getting to know your student a little more at, say, a gym yoga class. They may not have time or a small enough number to focus in on each individual person and know what that person needs So maybe a trauma-informed approach is to try to offer something that's more general. But as we move into yoga therapy, we're really working to get to know each individual person and what their goals are and their unique life experiences, and how we might adapt a practice that would help them build really holistic health and healing.
Yeah. So what is yoga therapy?
Yeah, yoga therapy is focused more on the health condition. So someone may come in a group, it may be a group class, or they might come to a private and want to, say, work on flexibility or balance, or it might be time management, or just determination, anxiety, PTSD. Of course, we've mentioned that. It could be MS, it could be scoliosis, it could be just about any kind of health condition, or emotional, mental, physical, maybe, just determination. I'm procrastinating all the time and I want to be able to focus on my goals, and, why can't I lose weight? Right. So we work around that, and we target the individual's goals and health and wellness goals, and build a practice around that. So it might include postures or movements. It might also include breath. It might include meditations. It might include self-reflection, journaling, or singing, chanting. A whole variety of tools in the toolbox can be utilized to promote and be a catalyst for health and healing.
Nice, nice. So you mentioned Whit, and that you took swimming from him. So growing up, you were a swimmer, soccer player. What kind of sport activities growing up?
Athlete was that? Yeah. So pretty early on, I did kind of that variety of dance, tap, and gymnastics. And then as I got older, I learned to swim. I loved swimming. I loved the water. So probably from the age of 8, which I think was when we could start, they didn't really let us be on the swim team, I think before the age of 8 or somewhere around there. So I started swim team in the summers and dive team. Loved swimming and diving. And then ended up doing that in high school on the team, made the team, and was on varsity swimming. And then kind of wanting a little bit of cross training, we would run and lift weights as part of swim team. And I found out that I was a pretty decent runner and wanted to do cross country, but I couldn't do 3 sports because I had gotten into soccer as kind of that cross training sport, because it was a spring sport and was after swimming. So I got involved in soccer, and I was on the junior varsity soccer team. And then when I was teaching, I had the opportunity to coach the JV soccer team at my old high school.
Yeah. So,
and then I was a lifeguard when I got into college. I took lifeguarding. Yeah, I didn't continue swimming. I didn't get on a, but I transitioned to lifeguarding, and I was a lifeguard for several summers.
Yeah. So you are a Tar Heel, so you went to UNC Greensboro, and you majored in?
Well, I was a Spartan. UNC Greensboro was a Spartan.
Spartan, okay.
Okay, but I did go to UNC Chapel Hill after I graduated. But UNC Greensboro, graduated as an art education major.
And so you taught art at your high school?
No, I didn't. So I know I have a twisted story and a crisscross path, but so I got my major in art education and loved it, wanted to go out on my own and offer some like art camps and things. But that isn't quite what happened. I was substituting, and in the midst of substituting, someone approached me, the vice principal approached me about needing a teacher for the end of the year in science, earth and physical science. And I had actually gotten a lot of credits in the sciences when I was at UNCG. It was one of the things that I might move into, but I ended up kind of in art instead. And it was kind of between art, music, and science. So I taught science at my old high school for a year and a half. And that was when I went to UNC Chapel Hill because I was working towards my biology degree.
There you go.
Yeah.
Um,
And then in the midst of all that, answered a call to ministry.
right, I was gonna say, and then
jump tracks yet again.
Yeah, went to grad school, right? And
went, yeah.
So yeah, ministry. What is your call story?
Well, that goes back to when I was a little girl and felt kind of a call to go into ministry, but I really didn't know what that meant at the time. And to me, it looked like a life that was unlike what I thought I wanted for myself. The people I saw around me, there weren't many women in ministry at the time. And so I just really didn't know how to envision myself in that role. And yet often found myself in leadership roles within the church, whether it was my local congregation or wider church activities, camps, different things, found myself in leadership roles there. And then while I was, in between college and teaching, I worked as an intern at the Board of Christian Education in the Southern Province. And part of that role was working with the Regional Youth Council and helping to write program for camps and conferences and leading those things. So I started applying for jobs. I needed money and I needed to work somewhere. And it wasn't sure if teaching was going to be the place where that happened. So I also was applying to work as a Christian educator. There's more in there, but felt a call into ministry when I was young, and then in the midst of that position and work, I got the opportunity to do an kind of a banner, a large banner for a conference on mission, and did that. And God really spoke to me through that experience of creating that piece, presenting it, sharing it at the conference, and then the response to that work. So I really felt called in that. And people started asking me about, if I'd thought about going into ministry, and I really resisted quite a bit and kept pushing back. So I thought, okay, well, I've got this education background. Maybe I'll do Christian education, ministry of education within the church, and got accepted into a church. They asked me to come on and work with them. And then that was the same time that I was asked to be this fill-in science teacher in my old high school. And I knew that the art teacher, I knew both of them. There were two art teachers there, and I knew both of them and thought, I might be able to transition into their position upon retirement or something like that if I kind of stayed in the system. So I said, no, I'm not going to go into church ministry right now. And I went ahead and taught in the public school. And then, a year and a half later, it seemed that things were not quite opening up like I thought they would. And of course, my pastors and other people around me kept saying, hello, don't you see the signs that we all see? So I went to my pastor one day after church and just said, I think that I would be willing to go to seminary. I think I need to go to seminary. And he was kind of just laughed and said, yeah, let's get that process started. So we started that process. And I actually went to seminary before I was an approved candidate. And then that came later.
Seminary was where?
In Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. The Moravian Seminary was where I went. I felt like if I was going to work in the church, I needed to understand a little more deeply my tradition and the history, and going to the seminary seemed to be the way to do that. And they also provided some scholarships for tuition.
So who and what are Moravians?
Yeah. Well, I grew up in the Moravian Church. My dad went there because they got to eat in church and sing, and he loved to sing and he loved to eat, and it seemed like a great combination. So Thus, we became Moravians. That was, where I grew up. But the Moravians go back to a pre-Reformation tradition. Our founder was John Huss, who was in modern day Prague and Moravia area, but Bohemia. He was a Bohemian priest. And that doesn't mean the Bohemians from the 60s, but the Bohemians in Bohemia. And he was a reformer within the Catholic Church, and that did not win him any friends. So he was burnt at the stake, and the people who kind of felt that there needed to be reformation in the church and continued to work towards that were called Hussites. And then 100 years later, that when, your favorite person, Martin Luther, decided, hey, come on, we need to move this forward a little bit. And somebody picked up his thoughts that he had nailed to the church door and had them published and passed them around, and word got around. And of course, that started what we call now the Protestant Reformation. But Huss was about 100 years before that, in a different part of the world, but close by. Luther being in Germany and Huss just being right there kind of next door in modern day Czech Republic. And so I guess the rest is somewhat history. The Hussites were persecuted because they weren't Catholic and they weren't really Protestant either, or at least the Protestant didn't think so. They were kind of more along the Anabaptist line at that time, but then they had to kind of publicly redefine what they believed, and they went through a process of that. But they were still persecuted and exiled and ended up in various parts of Europe until Zinzendorf, who was a Lutheran count, said, hey, Protestants, you can come live here and we won't persecute you and you can live in harmony and community. And everyone said, hey, that sounds like a great idea. He brought them over. And of course, when you get a group of people together from different places and they've been worshiping somewhat differently, and even though they all may believe in Jesus, we know sometimes there's some bumps in the road. And so those bumps in the road, he brought them together and said, let's all figure this out. They did. That renewal sparked what we know today as the renewed Moravian Church. Those immigrants from Moravia who ended up in Germany and then reformed based on their traditions and the teachings of Huss, who Zinzendorf and Luther both affirmed. And then within just a few years, they were going out around the world, kind of taking the gospel to places where people were being persecuted, and to the vulnerable and marginalized, like the slaves in St. Thomas, which was one of the first places they went. But they continued to do that, and that's kind of how they ended up in America. They came to not only evangelize the colonists, but also, and most specifically, they thought that they might be able to reach and help the Native Americans, which, as we know, did not go well. But
yeah, so
that's how we ended up in America.
Yeah, so
initially.
You served at a historical church in Tuscarawas County at Shumbrun. So yeah, what is that story of T County and the Moravians and the Native Americans there?
So Zeisberger was one of the Moravian missionaries that came to Ohio. He was the first Moravian missionary that came to Ohio and kind of scouted out some places where they might be able to establish a community. He I guess one might say, made friends with the chief, the local Native American tribe, and negotiated with the chief to be able to have some land. And that was what we know as Schönbrunn. Little spring, beautiful spring, I think is the German or the English translation of Schönbrunn. And it was along a little river at that time. And they kind of tried to build a community and of Native peoples who wanted to believe in Jesus, wanted to live. That kind of created conflicts within their own community. But for a variety of reasons, they established themselves there at Schönbrunn and built up a native community there. It was mostly led by the native people. And then, of course, during the American Revolution, that created conflicts with some of the colonists, and that particular settlement and the other settlements around it, Jenetenhun, they did not survive through the revolution. But church has been established just down the street from the original settlement. That settlement has been rebuilt and rededicated, and the church took that name as its own. So it's Schönbrunn Community Moravian Church. And that's where Rain was born and baptized. Our daughter.
Yeah. So you've been to Prague. What did you think of Prague? I mean, you traveled to Prague.
Gorgeous. Yeah. Beautiful place, beautiful people.
Yeah. Did you learn Czech?
I tried. Until my Czech friend said, please stop. He begged me to stop. I kept trying. Please stop trying to stop. Please stop.
You can check. It's right.
I was trying to order pizza or something. I don't know, some American food in a Czech restaurant, and he just laughed at me. I just wanted to say thank you. And
yeah. You also spent some time in Suriname.
I did, yeah. Which is where I met my Czech friend, Yari. But yeah, we were in Suriname for about 6 weeks for a Unity seminar at the turn of the decade, and turn of the century, 2000, in the year 2000. We were there with young leaders. I was young at the time. Young leaders in ministry from all parts of the Moravian world. So we had folks from Tanzania, South Africa, Germany, Czech Republic, North and South America.
Nice. So then Suriname is your travels through the church. So you then went to Arizona, to the desert, and from the desert you went to Fargo, North Dakota, to the frozen tundra, and then from Fargo you went to Wilmington, North Carolina, and the beach.
Yes.
So how were those travels as you move along?
Yeah, so concluded seminary in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, and then took a call back to Winston-Salem, or Rural Hall, North Carolina, serving at Rural Hall Moravian Church as an associate. And then it was in the midst of that I spent that time in Suriname, and then coming out of that experience, took a call to Arizona, the Morning Star Moravian Church there. Loved the Southwest, had always felt called to the Southwest. So when I got that call in hand from the church, it just felt right. It felt like where God was leading me. After I had been there a few years, of course, the world experienced, in America, experienced 9/11, and some of the kind of financial crisis that was going on before and after affected a lot of the population of my congregation, who kind of would live between the Midwest and the Southwest, different parts of the year, the snowbirds, as we call them. And so they were not able to continue their ministry, and we kind of embraced that call to die and be reborn in a way. And I thought the best chance that they would have is for me to take a call somewhere else, so that they would get new eyes, new ears, new heart, maybe new leadership. And so I stayed through the process of their closure, and then took a call to Fargo, North Dakota, which I had never even imagined going to visit there, much less living there. And yet, and I was really sick when I went for the call meeting. And I remember the plane ride there. It was so uncomfortable because of my head cold. But the people right away just embraced me and welcomed me. And I could see myself living there. It was a fun, wonderful place to be. So learned a lot about farming and where our food comes from, and the importance, the real importance of being tied to the earth and creation, and what all of that our farmers and harvesters and just the whole food chain, what it does for us to help us survive.
Yeah.
How important it is.
Yeah. Eventually you end up in New York City. What did you think about the Big Apple? Yeah.
Yeah. So, well, right. I moved to the beach and you stopped there,
Right.
but then I met this guy along the way from Ohio, and so we decided to kind of both open ourselves up for call. And that's how I ended up in Schönbrunn, in New Philadelphia. And then from there, we took a call to New York on Staten Island, and I served Great Kills Moravian Church. And again, another place I had never imagined living. Visiting, yes, as an art major, absolutely. Living, just didn't think about it. I was geared towards the Southwest when I was in art school. So, but the energy of the city is fun. It's exciting. It was nice to be involved in Moravian Open Door when I had the chance to be, and to become a little closer to some of the pastors that serve our metros, especially from the Caribbean. My supervising pastor, who recently passed, Right Reverend Hopeton Clinton, and Bishop Clinton was my supervising pastor when I was in seminary. He was my deacon supervisor when I was in the Southwest, and he consecrated me as a presbyter. And then, getting to know some of his Jamaican and otherwise the Caribbean colleagues when I was in the metro area was a delight. And so it was fun to be able to, go in and explore the city and then be able to come back to Staten Island as well. So that was good.
Yeah.
And that's where we really kind of, we started Earth and Cup at Schönbrunn with those who wanted more movement, and they wanted like a prayerful practice and a way to kind of combine prayer and movement. And we did that there and started exploring that. You taught karate, of course, there. And then we went to New York and got the opportunity there to explore developing that, and really met some wonderful people, and started that Earth and Cup community.
Yeah.
And touch and pray.
Yeah. And then also the integration into vulnerable segments of the population. We, really got to do some cool work.
Yeah. Yeah, was able to meet as the chaplain for the day with Moravian Open Door. I would meet with the residents there, but we also got to do movement, and I was able to teach them some of that emotional regulation, that stress. So many of them had backgrounds, traumatic backgrounds in one form or another. That's traumatic to end up homeless in New York City, and so we would talk about that and where God was in all of that for them. And we pray together and we would breathe together, and some wonderful experiences there. Good people. Yeah.
March 13th, 2020. The world goes into lockdown. And what was COVID like in New York City?
I think probably different from other places. With the population density being what it was, immediately our board met kind of that morning. We had a small worship service for those who felt safe coming together, and we met following and decided to kind of cease all of our gatherings. And it was a while before we kind of found ways to come back together. Small groups would meet. We were doing class from home. And that took a huge portion of time, a lot of attention and focus to help our daughter through that, and trying to still be pastor to a congregation, because in some ways we were not essential workers like the doctors or nurses or firefighters or police, but we still needed to be present and actively working, leading worship, helping people, walking with people virtually. We immediately went online and started using Zoom so that people could stay connected and talk and have that interactive kind of worship experience that they were used to, even though there were challenges with that, trying to figure it out as we went, like everybody was. And so, yeah, doing school from home, trying to figure that out. Teachers had varying levels of ability with technology also. They were trying to figure it out. So, we got PE equipment, and we're teaching soccer, and we're teaching basketball, and we're teaching, our daughter had to ride a bike and just to get outside and be able to do some things, using online resources and trying to figure out first grade math. And yeah, so, ordering groceries in, it was intense. It was intense.
Girl Scout cookies, right?
Oh, right. Yes, it was Girl Scout season. We got all these Girl Scout cookies and had to distribute them in the midst of lockdown. And people were wonderful. And parents stepped up who were essential workers, and they took extra cookies and they got them to family members. They got them to coworkers. We took cookies to nurses and hospitals, and we sold them all. And, the girls didn't have to, the troop didn't take a loss. Right. People were amazing, really. Yeah. So it was, I remember those early days, we made rainbows and we made hearts and we put them in our windows and we tried to cheer one another on, not knowing how long this would all last and exactly, how contagious things were and what could we do, in those early days. We just really didn't know. So.
Yeah. Your congregation, some of your members got into hand making masks at that time. I mean, I know you guys.
Yeah. We gathered up fabric. One of my colleagues went to Brooklyn at a store that was still willing to open their doors, and they sold us fabric and they brought it back. And then some of our ladies started making masks, and we sent them all over. Mm-hmm.
You, in the midst of COVID, you take a call to Dublin, Ohio, and come back here, and the studio that you're sitting in now is, the studio in the church you serve, Church of the Redeemer. And you took up Irish step dance.
Well.
That's a true statement.
Yes, that's a true statement. There's a little more to that story, but yes.
Yeah. Well, what's a little more to that story?
Irish step dancing, again, something I never imagined myself doing. But yes, I took a call to Dublin, Ohio, and our daughter Rain had taken some classes in New York and really enjoyed them. Mm-hmm. So when we moved here, I remembered going to a dinner where a particular school had been dancing, and we were honoring the school owner who had just passed from cancer. And so it just stuck in my head. I knew that they were located in Dublin, so it would be close for us. And I started trying to find them, and then connected with them at one of the kind of modified Dublin Irish festivals as we were coming out of COVID. And so we got Rain signed up for classes. And then my husband, who had always said, let's take some dance classes together. Way back when we first got married, we were going to take some dance classes in Wilmington. And it just never happened. We just, couldn't find the time, couldn't make it happen. But, he was like, we should do Irish step because our daughter's dance teacher teaches the adult class, right? So I'm like, yeah, that sounds fun. And then the way the schedule worked out, you couldn't go. So I ended up starting without you. I went just to try it out to see what it was like, and kept going back. They were working on Dublin Irish Festival stuff at the time, and so I just went to kind of try it out, check it out, and then went back the next fall. We all kind of went back and started taking Irish step. And then your second year, you can, if you're ready, start doing solo class. So I started doing solo class, which means I'm doing the soft shoe and the hard shoe, not just Kaylee figures, Kaylee dancing, which is the group dancing or the couples dancing. The solo class is you're learning the solo steps. And one night last fall, someone said, "Hey, has anybody thought about taking a team to Oireachtas?" What's Oireachtas? Well, it's the Mid-American Regional Competition. Oh, okay. So they were looking for an eighth. They had two groups of four. They were looking for a fourth person, second team, and they were looking for someone to fill out that 8-hand. They're like, "Oh, if we have 8, we can do an 8-hand." Well, it sounded kind of fun. I had no idea what I was saying yes to. But I thought, well, that sounds like fun and good exercise, and I'll learn a little more. And so I said yes. And we practiced all through the fall, extra rehearsals and costumes. And I felt like I was a Sweet Adeline again. We didn't talk about my singing, but yeah. But when I was in Arizona, I sang with my mom. And then when I was in Arizona, I was with an international competition chorus. And we had to wear the makeup and the wigs and the costumes and all that stuff. And we did dancing and singing. So anyway, I felt like I was doing that again. But we went to Mid-American regional competition, and did well enough that our teacher thinks we should take a team to nationals. So we'll see. But it's fun. It's been fun.
Yeah. So talk a little bit about Sweet Adelines. What is Sweet Adelines? How long have you been there?
It's a 4-part harmony that, an art form, a musical art form that originated here in America, barbershop. And my parents were both barbershoppers. My dad sang with the Spebs or Spebsqua, and my mom sang with Sweet Adelines. She was in a quartet. When she was pregnant with me, they were on the international stage, Music Boutique. And so those women and the men in my father's quartet were, kind of formative adult figures early on in my life. And I remember sitting kind of in the center of their circle during practice and listening to that harmony, just soaking in to my being. And so in college, my mom wanted to do something together. And I said, I haven't sung in a long time and I wouldn't mind singing again. What if we went to Sweet Adelines together? So I was a bass in the Golden Triad chorus. And when I moved to Pennsylvania, I sang for a little bit with a local chorus there, never competed with them. And then when I moved to Arizona, that was one of the pieces that solidified that call for me. There was a chorus meeting in the church where I was called to serve. And so I started out singing with them, Phoenix Showcase. And then when they disbanded, I tried out and got accepted into the Scpttsdale Chorus. And so I sang with the Scpttsdale Chorus, competed with a quartet once, but I sang barbershop in that baritone, my father's part, the harmony. And then when I moved to Fargo, North Dakota, I was one of the music team leaders and part of the leadership in the chorus, and stayed a baritone.
And Scottsdale's pretty popular chorus. I mean, fairly well.
They're international winners, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Actually, the year that I took the call to North Dakota, they were preparing for competition and they won. They got a first place and they went to international that year. So, yeah. I tried. I was like, I could come back. I could practice. I could sing with you. I could practice at home. And the director she's like, no, you need to follow. Yeah. She knew I didn't have the money or time to be able to do that and serve my congregation well. So, but great ladies, wonderful experience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So lightning round, here we go as we close up. You ready?
Sure.
How many pairs of socks do you have?
I have no idea. I have a whole drawer full of old socks, new socks. I just cleaned some out, and my new favorites are Bombas, which if you buy one, they give one to someone who's homeless. So, or who is, yeah, in need. So I've been supporting them and got my daughter some socks, and I like their exercise socks. So I think I now have maybe 5 or 6 pairs of Bombas socks, and let's go with maybe 40 pairs of socks. I don't know. I haven't counted. I have no idea. It's a full drawer. Probably need to go through them again. Get rid of some.
There you go. So we all have movies that, if back in the day when you would click through the channels, that you would always stop and watch, when they were on, no matter where in the movie they are, you stop and watch it. So what are those movies for you?
Okay. Princess Bride, my very first little date at home, or one of my very first dates in high school was Princess Bride. We watched it, and I love that movie. Probably Star Wars, the originals, I've watched those many, many, many times. And I have to say Dirty Dancing was probably, pretty formative early on. That slew of movies, around that time period. But that's the one that, Pretty in Pink, what was it, Breakfast Club, all that whole set, right? Yeah.
Basketball or football? Yeah, go ahead. Basketball or football?
Basketball. Sorry, Ohio. Sorry, Buckeyes. But
go ahead. It's that UNC thing, yeah.
It's North Carolina thing, not necessarily UNC.
Okay, yeah, there you go.
I grew up, that was our, there were people watch football. I mean, I was actually a Pee Wee cheerleader, I think, but when I was itty bitty. But, there was football around. It was just that my family, and it was basketball. It's just always basketball. NC State, UNC, Duke, major rivals, Wake Forest. I grew up in Winston-Salem. There's Wake Forest. So just, it was.
Yeah. Can your daughter go to Duke?
No. Maybe Duke Divinity. She could go to Duke Divinity if she wanted to one day, or Duke Medical School. But
no. Okay. Thorns and Roses.
It might hurt a little or a lot.
Yeah.
I'm more of a, she could go to any of the others, just
not Duke. Yeah, okay.
Not a blue devil.
Thorns and Roses. What most difficult challenge, most fulfilling triumph?
In life, or
whatever. Yes, no, whatever. Work, life, whatever.
Okay. So, well, probably the biggest rose would be, our family. Starting our family, our wedding, our daughter, building our family with, Rowan, and just, that's probably the biggest rose. Biggest challenge. Was probably when my dad had his aneurysm, and just, So losing my dad suddenly, and then having to figure out and care for my mom, and that, continued caregiving. That's, continues to be, just personal challenge. Wanting to do the right thing for my folks and to honor my dad, and but also be the best person and, you know, the best parent I can be, the best spouse that I could be for my own family. Balancing that with, you know, responsibilities of everything else. Probably the greatest challenge, but also blessing. The Rose. Watching Rain excel. You know, try out a new sport, try hockey just for fun, try Irish dance and see how far she can go with that. And seeing her excitement about that is, you know, an absolute rose in this past year. Mm-hmm.
Earthen Cup, what grounds you?
What grounds me? Well, I mean, faith, family, getting out, being able to get outside. Having lived in the Southwest, I really like the sun, but I like being able to get outside, and whether it's walking, hiking, I like gardening. I'm not great at it. I don't have the green thumb that my grandmother did, but or my father, but I try, and it helps me feel connected to my ancestors, who kind of had a farming background, and so that connects me and grounds me and to my past, and also enables me to feel like I'm providing something rich and nourishing for my family and friends when I can get something to survive and use it. So yeah, digging around in the earth, gardening is, I enjoy that when I can get the chance to do it, and I still like to swim and be around water, getting around water, whether it's a lake, a river, an ocean. Yeah.
So the cup portion of Earthen Cup. So how do you empty your cup and how do you fill it?
Yeah, well, I'm still emptying my cup because I still feel like there's so much more I have to learn or can learn. You know, in my vocation as a pastor, in my vocation as a yoga therapist, I'm still learning and growing and trying to challenge myself. And in that way, I feel like I'm emptying my cup in order to learn from those around me. And I also empty my cup by doing my yoga practice and meditation and the breath, taking that time for stillness and quiet, which is, I think, really essential for me. It's always been, I can't do art. I can't do, I don't find, music stills me. Music stills me and helps me stay grounded and connected. My art grounds me and helps me feel connected. But sometimes in the chaos, I need to remember to take time for it.
Very nice.
And when I don't, I can feel it in my body. I feel out of balance.
There you go. Final thoughts. Anything?
No. This has been fun.
Not knowing what
I had no idea. I mean, yeah. I didn't have much time to really think about what I was going to say or what you were going to ask. And
there you go.
It's good.
Yeah. You did good.
And
cool.
So
well, thanks. Yeah, like I said, well, it was the kind of the anniversary. We're in January, and so starting this and series, and then also the anniversary of Earthen Cup. So congrats and blessings, and thanks for taking a sip. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you everybody for, if you're still hanging in there with us and you've listened this far. Bless you.
You've endured. Namaste.
I honor the light in myself and I honor the light in you. If your computer's still on and you're still with us. So, and just shout out to all the Earth and Cup community, thank you so much for your gracious support, and just you believe in us, we believe in you, and thank you. I, feel very grateful at the start of 2024 for my family, my spouse, and the opportunities that we have in front of us for the year ahead.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah.